too loud. Who gave you permission to have this gathering?
We're just having a family barbecue, ma'am.
A barbecue?
Margaret Prescott laughed. She looked at the yard full of black faces, then at Andre Fletcher.
Your house?
We moved in this morning.
This city has laws. I don't know who let you in, but I'm fixing this right now.
Margaret grabbed the garden hose and blasted the grill. Charcoal hissed. Ribs slid into the dirt. Water sprayed across the table, soaking plates and bread.
This neighborhood has no room for suspicious people!
Andre's wife stepped forward.
What are you doing? Cleaning the trash out of my neighborhood.
Margaret turned and made a phone call. Andre set the tongs down and said nothing, but what Margaret didn't know was that one call was about to turn the entire neighborhood upside down. Have you ever watched someone's arrogance collapse the second they realized who they just messed with because you are about to drop a comment and hit like, and let me take you back to where it all started. 3 hours before that phone call, Andre Fletcher stood in an empty living room, surrounded by cardboard boxes. The house smelled like fresh paint and new hardwood. 44 years old, 22 years on the force, and today he was moving into the kind of neighborhood he used to drive past on patrol. Hawthorne Ridge sat on the north side of Glenfield, North Carolina. Stone mansions with iron gates, manicured hedges trimmed to the inch, European cars parked in circular driveways. Every lawn had a sprinkler system on a timer. Every mailbox had a family name engraved in brass. It was the kind of place where people smiled from a distance but never handed you a key. Every family on the block was white. Andre carried a box labeled kitchen through the front door. His wife stood at the granite counter, unwrapping glasses. Sonia Fletcher was 41, head nurse at Glenfield Memorial. She had spent 16 years in emergency rooms. She could read a crisis before it arrived. Nothing surprised her. Almost nothing. "You sure about this neighborhood?" she asked without looking up. "We earned this house, Sonia. I'm not questioning the house. I'm questioning who's watching us move in." Their golden retriever, Duke, padded across the marble foyer, nails clicking on the stone. 3 years old, 70 pounds of calm. He pressed his nose against the glass front door and watched a woman across the street staring from behind white curtains. Andre had been appointed police chief of Glenfield 8 weeks ago, first black man to hold the position in the city's 96-year history. The appointment wasn't a celebration. It was a correction. 11 months earlier, a federal audit had exposed a pattern of racial profiling inside the department. Traffic stops targeting black drivers at 4 times the rate of white ones. Use of force complaints that vanished into filing cabinets. Officers rotated instead of removed. The city council needed someone to rebuild trust. Andre was that someone. He had spent 2 decades doing police work the way it was supposed to be done. Internal affairs respected him. The rank and file followed him. The community believed in him. They gave him the badge and every problem that came with it. His first move as chief was a full department audit. 14 officers received formal discipline. 6 were terminated. One of them was Sergeant Gerald Prescott. Gerald had served 21 years. His file held 10 formal complaints. 7 involved excessive force against black suspects. 2 involved racial slurs caught on body camera. Every complaint had been reviewed and cleared by supervisors who shared his views. Andre didn't share those views. General Prescott was 56. He lived in the stone colonial directly across from the house Andre had just bought. His wife was Margaret Prescott, 53. She had lived on Hawthorne Ridge for 18 years. She organized the annual gala at the country club. She monitored every new listing on the street through her real estate agent. She considered herself the keeper of the neighborhood's character. Neither Gerald nor Margaret knew who had just moved in across the street. By noon, the moving truck was gone. Andre set up the grill in the backyard. Charcoal, not propane. His father had taught him that. He rubbed the ribs with brown sugar, smoked paprika, and a splash of apple cider vinegar. The same recipe, 3 generations deep. The smell drifted across the stone wall and down the cul-de-sac. Sonia arranged paper plates on a folding table and connected a Bluetooth speaker. Motown drifted across the yard. Duke lay on the patio, tail wagging, nose pointed at the grill. A few of Andre's colleagues stopped by in plain clothes, Lieutenant Nolan Webb, Sergeant Tara Colvin. They brought corn on the cob and folding chairs. It was supposed to be a quiet afternoon, ribs on the grill, music in the air, a family settling into a new home. The kind of Sunday that nobody remembers. But across the street, Margaret Prescott stood at her kitchen window. She counted every car that pulled up. She studied every face that stepped out. She photographed every license plate with her phone. Her husband sat behind her in the den, a tumbler of scotch in his hand. The television was on. He wasn't watching. "Who are those people?" Margaret asked. Gerald didn't answer. He didn't need to. Margaret didn't wait long. Margaret Prescott didn't wait long. By 12:30, she had already texted 3 neighbors. The messages were identical. "Have you seen who just moved in across from us? Come look." Not one of them walked outside, but every one of them read the message. By 1 o'clock, the smoke from Andre's grill had drifted past the stone wall and into the street. The bass from the speaker thumped low enough to feel in your chest. Cars lined the curb, a silver sedan, a black SUV, a gray pickup. Nothing flashy, nothing illegal. But Margaret stood at her living room window with her arms crossed, watching every arrival like a security guard checking credentials. She crossed the street at 1:15. Andre was at the grill turning chicken thighs with a pair of steel tongs. Sonia was arranging aluminum trays of coleslaw and baked beans on the folding table. Duke lay in the shade of a patio umbrella, ears flat, eyes half closed. Lieutenant Webb sat in a lawn chair balancing a plate on his knee. Sergeant Colvin leaned against the fence laughing at something someone had said. The yard smelled like hickory and sweet sauce. Motown played low from the speaker on the windowsill. Margaret walked through the open gate without knocking. She didn't introduce herself. She didn't smile. She stopped 4 feet from the grill and put both hands on her hips. "I need to speak to whoever is in charge here." Andre looked up. "That would be me? Are you the homeowner?" "I am." Margaret looked around the yard. She counted the guests. She studied the table, the cooler, the speaker. Her jaw tightened. "You can't just move in and throw a block party without notifying the neighborhood." "This isn't a block party," Andre said. "It's a family barbecue." "It looks like a block party to me." She pointed at the cars on the curb. "Those vehicles are in front of my property. That's a violation." "The street is public parking, ma'am." "Don't ma'am me. I've lived on this street for 18 years. 18! And I'm telling you, this kind of activity is not what we do here." Sonia stepped forward. "What kind of activity exactly?" Margaret turned to face her. She looked Sonia up and down, slowly, the way someone inspects a stain they intend to remove. "Loud music, open flames near the property line, excessive foot traffic. I've already documented everything." She held up her phone and waved it. The screen showed photos she had taken from across the street. Andre's yard, his guests, the grill, the cars, all of it. "Documented," Sonia kept her voice even. "We've been here 5 hours. And in 5 hours you've done more damage to this neighborhood's reputation than anyone has in 2 decades? Andre set the tongs down. He wiped his hands on a towel and stepped around the grill. He stood between Margaret and his wife, not aggressive, not defensive, just present. "Mrs. Prescott, we're having a cookout in our backyard. The music is at a reasonable volume. The grill is on our patio. Our guests parked on a public street. We're not violating any law." Margaret's face flushed red. She was not used to being corrected. She was certainly not used to being corrected by someone who looked like Andre Fletcher. "I know exactly what this is," she said, lowering her voice. "You people move into a nice neighborhood, and within 1 day, 1 day, you turn it into something it's not." The yard went quiet. Lieutenant Webb set his plate down. Sergeant Colvin stopped mid-sentence. Duke lifted his head from the patio and stared at Margaret. "You people," Sonia repeated. "You heard me." Margaret didn't flinch. "I've seen it happen before. Property values drop, cars on the lawn, noise every weekend. I'm not going to stand here and watch it happen to Hawthorne Ridge. Andre's cousin Daryl stood near the cooler, a can of soda halfway to his mouth. He hadn't moved since Margaret started talking. His eyes shifted between Andre and the woman standing in their yard uninvited, listing the reasons they didn't belong. He opened his mouth to say something. Andre caught his eye and shook his head once. Daryl closed his mouth and set the can down. A man 2 houses down, Russell Conrad, had been washing his Mercedes in the driveway. He heard every word. He turned off the hose and stood there looking at the ground. He didn't walk over. He didn't speak up. He just stood there, holding a chamois cloth, pretending he hadn't heard. His wife appeared at the front door. She looked at what was happening across the street, then went back inside and closed the door behind her. The lock clicked. Andre said nothing for a long moment. He looked at Sonia. Her jaw was tight. Her hands were steady, but her eyes were not. She had heard words like this before. In hospital hallways, in parking lots, in break rooms where colleagues lowered their voices when she walked in. But she had never heard them aimed at her family in their own yard, on their first day. "Mrs. Prescott," Andre said calmly, "I think you should go home." "Oh, I'm going home. And I'm making calls." She turned on her heel and marched toward the gate. Then she stopped, turned back, pointed her finger at Andre like she was marking a spot on a map. "I'm calling every person on this street. Every single one. I'm filing a noise complaint with the city, and if this isn't shut down by 3 o'clock, I'm calling the police." "You're right," Andre said. "You're damn right it is. And when they show up, we'll see who belongs here and who doesn't." She walked across the street, up her circular driveway, and through her front door. It slammed hard enough that the neighbors on either side looked out their windows. Nobody came outside. Nobody said a word. Sergeant Colvin set her plate on the grass. She hadn't taken a bite in 10 minutes. She looked at Webb. He looked back. Neither spoke. But the conversation passed between them, the kind of look that says, "We both know what just happened." The barbecue continued. But the laughter was gone. The music felt too loud now, even though nobody had touched the volume. Sonia busied herself rearranging plates that didn't need rearranging. Her hands trembled, not from fear, from the effort of keeping her voice steady in front of that woman. Andre's cousin Daryl walked over to the edge of the yard and stood by the fence. He pulled out his phone and typed something, then deleted it, typed again, deleted again. He wanted to post what had just happened, wanted to tell someone. But he looked at Andre standing quietly by the grill and understood that this wasn't the time. Not yet. Webb leaned close to Andre and dropped his voice. "Chief, you want me to?" "No." Andre shook his head. "Today I'm not the chief. Today I'm just a man grilling ribs in his backyard." Webb nodded. He understood. Andre didn't want to pull rank. He didn't want to flash a badge to earn basic respect. He wanted to see what this neighborhood was made of without the title. Colvin walked over. "Andre, she photographed our guests. Their cars, license plates. That's targeted surveillance." "I know. And you're okay with that?" Andre looked across the street at Margaret's house. The curtains moved. She was watching again. "I'm not okay with any of it," he said, "but I'm not going to give her a reason to say I was the problem." Duke padded over and pressed against Andre's leg. Andre reached down and scratched behind his ears. The dog looked up with steady brown eyes. Calm in a yard that had lost its calm. "If I have to tell someone who I am for them to treat me like a human being," Andre said quietly, "then knowing who I am won't change anything." Across the street, Margaret was already on the phone. She called 3 neighbors. She called a woman named Diane Porter, who lived 1 block over and always agreed with everything Margaret said. Diane had never questioned a single one of Margaret's complaints. She had never asked for proof. She had never driven by to see for herself. "They've taken over the whole cul-de-sac," Margaret told each one. "Music blasting, cars everywhere, smoke so thick you can't breathe. I don't feel safe." None of them came to look. None of them asked questions. They just listened, and every one of them believed her. By 2 o'clock, Margaret had filed a noise complaint with the city's non-emergency line. The operator asked if she had spoken to the homeowner. Margaret said she had tried, but they were hostile. The operator noted it and moved on. By 2:15, she had posted a photo of Andre's house on the neighborhood Facebook group. The caption read, "New neighbors, already a problem. Anyone else concerned?" Within 20 minutes, the post had 12 comments. Most agreed. A few used words like element and decline and there goes the neighborhood. One person wrote, "Someone should call the police before this gets out of hand." Margaret read that comment and smiled. Not one of them had met Andre Fletcher. 3 o'clock came and went. Andre didn't shut anything down. The grill was still warm. A fresh rack of ribs sat on the grate. The music was still playing. And Margaret Prescott was done waiting. She came back across the street at 3:20. This time she didn't come to talk. Margaret dragged her garden hose across the asphalt up Andre's driveway and through the open gate. 60 feet of green rubber trailing behind her like a fuse. She walked past the folding table, past the guests, past Sonia, and stopped 3 feet from the grill. "I warned you," she said. 3 o'clock. You didn't listen. She turned the nozzle to full blast. Water hit the grill like a fire hose. Charcoal exploded into steam. Ash sprayed across the patio. The ribs, the last rack Andre had put on 20 minutes ago, slid off the grate and landed in the mud. Water arced sideways and soaked the folding table. Paper plates dissolved. Plastic cups tumbled onto the grass. A tray of coleslaw floated for a second, then tipped over the edge. Andre's cousin, Daryl, jumped back. His shirt was drenched. Lieutenant Webb stood up so fast his chair folded behind him. Sergeant Colvin grabbed her phone off the table a half second before water reached it. "What the hell are you doing?" Sonia shouted. Margaret didn't stop. She swept the hose across the table like she was cleaning a crime scene, back and forth, methodical, deliberate. Water hit Sonia's legs, her shoes, the front of her dress. The folding table collapsed under the pressure. Aluminum trays crashed onto the patio. Baked beans splattered across the stone. The speaker toppled off the windowsill and cracked against the ground. The music cut to silence. Sonia stepped forward to grab the hose. Margaret swung it toward her. The metal nozzle caught Sonia across the forearm and knocked her sideways. Sonia stumbled. Her foot caught the leg of the folding table. She went down hard on the wet grass. Her elbow hit the patio edge. She gasped. For a moment, nobody moved. The yard was frozen. Water hissed against hot charcoal. Steam rose from the ruined grill in a thin white column. Sonia lay on her side in the wet grass, one hand clutching her forearm, the other pressed flat against the ground. Duke bolted from under the umbrella. He reached Sonia in 2 bounds. He stood over her barking, not aggressive, protective. His ears were flat. His body was between Sonia and Margaret. His tail was low. He planted his front paws on either side of Sonia's shoulders and refused to move. Margaret pointed at the dog. Her voice went shrill. "That animal is dangerous. It just attacked me. I'm calling animal control. That dog doesn't have a license." Duke hadn't touched her. He hadn't moved toward her. He was standing over Sonia, tail tucked, whimpering, his nose pressed against her neck. His entire body shook. Daryl pulled out his phone and started recording. His hands were shaking, but he held the camera steady. Webb positioned himself between Margaret and the Fletchers. His hand drifted toward his back pocket where his badge sat. He caught Andre's eye. Andre shook his head. One small, firm shake. Not yet. Webb stepped back. His jaw was tight. His fists were closed at his sides. 23 years on the force, and he had never wanted to break protocol more than he did in that moment. But he trusted Andre. He always had. Colvin moved to Sonia's side. She knelt on the wet grass, ignoring the water soaking through her jeans, and helped steady Sonia's arm. The welt was already rising, a thin red line that would darken to purple within the hour. Colvin had seen marks like this in domestic violence cases. She knew what they meant. Andre knelt beside his wife. He took her arm, gently. A red welt ran along her forearm where the nozzle had struck. Her dress was soaked through. Grass stained both knees. She was trembling, not from cold. "Are you okay?" His voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm fine." She looked at the welt on her arm. I'm fine, Andre. She wasn't. Andre helped Sonia to her feet. Duke pressed against her leg, his nose nudging her hand. She steadied herself and placed her palm on the dog's head. Her fingers were still shaking. Andre turned to Margaret. His face hadn't changed, not a muscle, but something behind his eyes shifted, something deep and controlled and very, very still. Every person in that yard could feel it. It was the kind of stillness that comes right before a verdict. Mrs. Prescott, he said. His voice was level, measured, the kind of calm that makes people listen harder. Everything you just did is being recorded by the security cameras on my house. He pointed. 2 cameras mounted under the eaves, small, black, red indicator lights blinking. Every second, every angle. The hose, the table, my wife on the ground, the dog standing over her, your words, all of it. Margaret's eyes darted to the cameras. She hadn't noticed them. Her hand was still on the hose nozzle, water pooled at her feet, running across the patio in thin streams. I don't care about your cameras, she said, but her voice was thinner now. The confidence had cracked just slightly, like a hairline fracture in a wall that's still standing. You should, Andre said, because assault, property destruction, and trespassing are crimes, and right now you're standing on my property holding the evidence. Margaret dropped the hose. It hit the patio with a wet slap. She looked around the yard. Every face stared back at her. Every phone was out. Every camera was pointed at her. Daryl's phone, Colvin's phone, a guest near the